$100 a barrel. Brent crude closed above that level yesterday for the first time since August 2022, and it is not stopping there. The Strait of Hormuz, the 21-mile-wide choke point between Iran and Oman that carries 1/5 of the world's oil supply, is effectively shut down. Shipping traffic through the strait has collapsed by more than 90%. More than 750 vessels are stranded. 6 seafarers are confirmed dead. Iran's new supreme leader went on national television and declared the blockade will continue as a tool to pressure the enemy. Here's the part that should alarm you. The International Energy Agency just authorized the largest emergency oil reserve release in its 52-year history, 400 million barrels. It was not enough to stop the price from surging another 9% in a single day. Let me walk you through exactly what is happening, why the worst is still ahead, and what $100 oil actually means for your gas bill, your groceries, your mortgage, and every product you buy. Before the war, everything was moving in the right direction. Gas prices had fallen below $3 a gallon for 13 consecutive weeks. The EIA forecast Brent crude would average just $58 per barrel for all of 2026. Americans were saving over $100 a year on fuel compared to 2024. Inflation was trending down. The Fed was expected to cut rates by summer. Then on February 28th, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury. Strikes hit targets across Iran. Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei was killed in the opening wave. Iran retaliated immediately. Missiles hit U.S. military bases. Drones struck Gulf state infrastructure. Saudi Arabia shut units at its largest refinery after a drone attack. Qatar halted liquefied natural gas production after strikes hit its Ras Laffan facility, the single largest LNG complex on Earth. And then the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps issued a warning over VHF radio that every ship in the waterway heard. The Strait of Hormuz was closed. Any vessel attempting to pass would be targeted. That was 13 days ago. The strait has not reopened. Let me give you the numbers, because this is where the scale becomes terrifying. Before the war, roughly 105 ships transited the strait daily. By March 6th, 13 made it through. By March 10th, 2 outbound crossings and 0 inbound. S&P Global Market Intelligence confirmed shipping dropped over 95%. Maersk suspended all transits. CMA CGM suspended. Hapag-Lloyd suspended. MSSC suspended. Every major shipping company on Earth pulled out. It was not a naval blockade in the traditional sense. It was because of drones, cheap commercially available drone technology that costs a fraction of the ships it destroys. Protection and indemnity insurance, the coverage every commercial vessel needs to operate, was formally withdrawn for Hormuz transit as of March 5th. Without insurance, no company sends its ship. Without ships, the oil stays in the ground. The attacks kept escalating. On March 1st, the oil tanker Skylight was struck north of Oman. 2 Indian crew members were killed, and 3 were injured. The same day, a drone boat hit the bulk carrier MKD Vyom, killing another Indian sailor. On March 2nd, the U.S.-flagged Stena Imperative was hit twice at a Bahrain port, and 1 worker was killed. On March 11th, the UK Maritime Trade Operations reported 17 incidents in the strait, 13 confirmed attacks, and 4 suspicious approaches in just 12 days of conflict. And then yesterday, March 12th, Mojtaba Khamenei, the 56-year-old son of the slain supreme leader, gave his first public address. He declared the strait must remain closed. He warned that all U.S. military bases in the Middle East should shut down or face further attacks. He called the blockade a tool to pressure the enemy. The IRGC went further. Their Khatam al-Anbiya headquarters issued a statement saying, "Expect oil at $200 per barrel." Here's what most people do not realize about why this crisis is escalating, not stabilizing. 20 million barrels per day normally flow through the Strait of Hormuz. There are only 2 pipelines that can bypass it. Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline has a design capacity of 7 million barrels per day, but the loading terminal at Yanbu can only handle about 3 million. The United Arab Emirates Fujairah pipeline adds roughly 1.5 million at maximum capacity. The International Energy Agency estimates practical bypass capacity at 3.5 to 5.5 million barrels per day. That leaves a gap of roughly 10 to 12 million barrels that physically cannot reach the global market if the strait stays closed. And here's the cascading problem. Gulf countries are running out of storage. Iraq cut 1.5 million barrels per day because its tanks were literally full. Kuwait declared force majeure on March 7th, a legal clause reserved for wars and natural disasters, citing the almost total absence of vessels in the Arabian Gulf. Saudi Arabia has slashed production by 2 to 2.5 million barrels per day. The United Arab Emirates is managing production levels downward. The IEA confirmed in its March 12th report that Gulf countries have collectively cut over 10 million barrels per day from the global market. That is roughly 10% of total world oil production. Gone. Now the IEA authorized 400 million barrels from strategic reserves. It is the largest release in the agency's history. The United States alone is contributing 172 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. But here is the math that matters. At the current disruption rate of 15 million barrels per day, those 400 million barrels get absorbed in just 26 days. It is a band-aid on a severed artery. Let me translate this into the numbers that matter when you open your wallet. Gas prices. The national average hit $3.60 on March 12th, according to AAA. That is up 67 cents from late February. Gas had been below $3 for 13 straight weeks. Ian Bremmer of the Eurasia Group expects $4 nationally within days. Capital Economics modeled a prolonged scenario where gas approaches $5 per gallon in the second quarter. Diesel is even worse. The national average hit $4.86 per gallon, up 96 cents in a single week. California diesel reached $6.15. Every product in the grocery store was shipped by a truck that runs on diesel. When diesel surges, the cost of moving food from farm to processing plant to distribution center to shelf increases at every single stage. The February Consumer Price Index report dropped Tuesday. Headline inflation came in at 2.4%. But here is the critical detail. That data covers the period before the oil shock. The war started February 28th, the last reporting day. The actual inflation impact has not shown up yet. Mark Zandi of Moody's said true inflation is likely closer to 2.7% and that he sees no sign of deceleration. Meanwhile, the economy lost 92,000 jobs in February, the worst month in 4. Unemployment rose to 4.4%. Fourth quarter 2025 GDP came in at just 1.4%, well below the 3% forecast. And the Fed is trapped. The federal funds rate sits at 3.5 to 3.75%. The CME FedWatch tool shows a 94 to 99% probability of a hold at next week's March meeting. Markets that were pricing 2 to 3 rate cuts this year are now pricing maybe 1, maybe 0. The Fed cannot cut rates to help growth because that would make inflation worse. They cannot raise rates to fight inflation because that would crash an already weakening economy. Goldman Sachs expects Brent to average $98 a barrel in March and April. Their risks are significantly skewed to the upside. Barclays warned Brent could test $120 a barrel if the conflict persists, and reach $150 a barrel before month end in a worst-case scenario. And there is an irony that almost nobody is discussing. Russia is winning. Russian Urals crude surged from roughly $40 per barrel to above $85 per barrel. Russia overtook Saudi Arabia as China's top seaborne crude supplier. India received a 30-day U.S. sanctions waiver specifically to buy Russian oil. A war launched partly to pressure Iran is inadvertently strengthening Russia's revenue base. There are only 2 scenarios right now. Scenario 1, the blockade is resolved within days. Goldman Sachs models Hormuz flows recovering from March 21st. In this case, oil retreats toward $70 to $80 a barrel. Gas drifts back toward $3. The economic damage is painful but contained. The Fed holds rates and reassesses in June. Scenario 2, the strait stays closed for weeks or months. Iran's new supreme leader has given no indication of backing down. Trump has called for unconditional surrender. Iran's foreign minister has rejected negotiations. In this scenario, Barclays projects oil above $120 a barrel. Qatar's energy minister warned of a $150 oil and a forced shutdown of all Gulf energy exports. Gas approaches $4 to $5 nationally. The 400 million barrel reserve release gets consumed in under a month. Inflation surges back toward 4%. The Fed remains frozen. And the cascading effects, higher shipping costs, higher food prices, higher airline tickets, higher mortgage rates, ripple through every corner of the American economy for the rest of the year. The difference between these two scenarios comes down to one question. When do tankers start moving through the Strait of Hormuz again? As of this morning, day 13 of the war, nobody has an answer. $100 oil is not the ceiling. It may be the floor. The largest oil supply disruption ever recorded is unfolding in real time. 10 million barrels per day have been cut from production. The largest emergency reserve release in history bought us 26 days. Gas is at $3.60 and climbing. The economy is losing jobs. The Fed is frozen. And Iran's new leader just promised the blockade will continue. What happens in the next 72 hours at next week's Fed meeting and at the Strait of Hormuz could determine the trajectory of the American economy for the rest of 2026. This is not a drill, and the clock is running.